Welcome to Talk of the Township with Mayor Matthew Moench.
Hi, my name is Suzanne Maeder. I am the Public Information Officer here in Bridgwater Township, and today I am joined by Mayor Matthew Moench. Hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
We are here today to talk municipal finance. It's budget season in municipalities all over New Jersey, and there's a lot of information and misinformation, and we're going to dig into Bridgwater 2025. How does that sound?
It sounds good,
Okay.
and I think this is super important because what we do at the township in making sure that we are responsive with our taxpayers' money is one of, if not the most important thing that we do here at the township. Besides public safety, this is our focus. And it's really important to me as mayor, and I think important to us as a community, to make sure that the public has the facts so that we can make sure we understand what it is we're doing, why we're doing it, and to make sure that when we have discussions over the different choices that we have to make in a budget, everyone's working from the same set of information, the same facts, and then we can have the discussions that we all want to have about priorities and how do we make sure that we provide services for our residents that is at a cost-effective way of doing it.
Let's start with what is Bridgwater's 2025 budget this year?
Sure, we are a $51.4 million budget. That covers all the staffing costs, the police, the parks, the public services that we provide, and that number accounts for all the staffing, the healthcare costs, debt service, insurance, everything that goes into running a business. And that's what this is. Bridgewater Township is a $51 million business, and our customers are the public. Mm-hmm. It's our taxpayers, and we have to provide for all of the things that any other business would have to provide.
Would you say that the $51 million is good value for taxpayer money for this year's budget?
Absolutely. And that is the most important thing to us, which is making sure that when we look at how the money is spent that is being given to us by our residents, that it is being done in an efficient, effective manner. We want recreation programs. We want parks. We need and want our police officers and our public service. So the first thing that we do is make sure that those items are addressed, and they're addressed in a way that provides those services, hopefully at the lowest cost possible.
Awesome. So people talk a lot about inflation. Does inflation affect Bridgewater's budget?
Oh, sure. As a starting point, if we kept our spending exactly the same as last year, if not we didn't add anything at all, with inflation, all those costs would immediately go up. So without even a new program or a new idea or a new employee or anything like that, doing nothing would mean either taxes would have to go up to account for inflation, or we'd have to make cuts in order to provide essentially less services for the same price because of inflation costs.
How does the inflation rate this year compare to Bridgewater's budget increase?
Right. So as you mentioned, because of inflation, last year inflation was 2.9%. Our increase in our budget this year over last year is 0.82%.
Oh, wow.
So we made sure in order to make that we weren't just passing on costs to our residents, we recognized that some of those fixed costs were going to go up no matter what, but we needed to also find other ways of cutting our own spending to make sure that our budget wasn't going up by 2.9% or more because of inflation.
Got it. Are there costs in the budget itself that we're not allowed to cut, that we're legally not allowed to touch?
Yes. So pensions, healthcare costs. We have obviously we have contractual agreements with some of our employee unions, debt service, liability, even things like utilities. We have to pay our electric bill. Mm-hmm. We have to pay our water bill. Mm-hmm. So all of those fire hydrants, as an example, people don't think about. We got to pay budget on our fire hydrants. So those are all things that we can't cut. Those are costs that are in this budget. There's nothing we can do about it. And that is about 25% of Bridgewater's budget is those items which, right off the table, can't be touched.
Why can't we just freeze our budget and keep it the same year after year after year?
Well, we can't for a couple of reasons. One, we have the rising costs, just inflation itself goes up. The other thing is that our needs change from year to year. Our priorities now are different than our priorities 10 years ago. Our priorities this year are a little bit different than our priorities last year, and will be different next year. You can't cut the things that we just talked about. So now you have to look at the items that you could look to cut. So are you reducing your police force? Are you laying off 3 police officers because we need to make up a certain amount of money? Are we laying off public works employees who are going to take care of our roads and our parks? Are you cutting back on senior programs? Are you cutting back on recreation programs?
Walk us through this graphic. What does this mean?
Sure. So if you look at the very far left slide, and what that represents is our budget, and it shows in any hypothetical year one. The red portion at the top, that is what we can't touch. It's inflation, and that's those services we talked about that are just contractually bound or legally imposed upon us by contract or state or whatever it may be. The blue is everything that we could, it's discretionary, within reason. I mean, we still have to provide for recreation and senior services and police, but how we do it has some discretion. If we kept the budget flat, if you start moving to the right, what you'll see is every year, inflation eats up a bigger portion of that budget. The contractual services continue to increase in some instances, depending on what they are, whether it's pension liability or costs like that imposed on us by the state, that by the time you get to year 6, 7, the far right part of that chart, what you're seeing is that all those discretionary services, the things that people want to be paying for, are every year have to get continually chipped away at. So the amount of services you're getting by year 6 is extremely reduced from the services that you're getting in year 1. And that is what happens when you have the inflation and the other fixed costs just suffocating our budget and suffocating the services that we're able to provide for our residents for the money that they all pay in taxes.
I see. Thank you. I appreciate it. Does Bridgwater control the assessed value of my home?
No, certainly not directly. So we have a tax assessor in Bridgwater. Now, what's important for residents to understand is that the tax assessor, who is a Bridgwater employee and works in Bridgwater, is ultimately controlled by the county and state regulations. So how your home is assessed is independently determined through the application of the state regulations and guidelines that governs how assessments are done. It's not set by a policy of the council or the administration to direct those employees who act independently within the guidelines that they're provided through the state regulations.
I see. So is that the same for all municipalities across New Jersey?
Yes. And that's why residents, when they want to appeal their taxes, if they don't believe it was done correctly, they go to the county board of tax appeals, because that's what governs value of property in all of New Jersey. That's how our system is set up. It's a county-based system, but each municipality has either their own or a shared, if it's a shared service, a tax assessor to implement those regulations.
Okay, that makes sense. If assessments go up every year, what does that say about Bridgwater as a town?
Well, it's positive overall. It says that people want to live here. It says that your land has more value. And ultimately, at some point when you go to sell your home or your whatever property you own in town, it's more valuable each year. That is certainly a positive. Now, I do understand. I talked to my father, and he says, well, that's great that my home value is going up, but I don't plan on moving anytime soon. And, that is the flip side to it, which is you see your value go up. Sometimes it's future value. But as a whole, from our township, we want people to want to live here. We want businesses to want to be here. It shows that this is a desirable place to be.
Let's go ahead and talk about some of the questions that we've sort of heard from various members of the public and online and that sort of thing. Why was the budget introduced so late this year?
Well, the budget's it's a $51.4 million budget, and that takes due diligence. And I am not, my obligation as mayor of the township, and especially in our form of government, is to present to the council the budget that I think best reflects the priorities and services of our community, and that I'm comfortable making sure is being done in a fiscally responsible way. And it is more important to me to make sure that that budget that we're going to introduce, that's going to set the cost on our residents and determine the services that's being provided, is the right one for our community. And if that means it takes an extra month or 2 months to do, that is my responsibility, and that is what I'm going to do every year.
Has the township been relying too much on surplus in recent years? Is it gone?
Well, no and no. Residents should also understand that municipal finance, while some aspects are very much like your home budget, other aspects aren't. So our budget must balance. So we have to show money in, money out. And there's also restrictions on what we can include in our budget. If I know I'm going to get money in August, but I don't have it today, I can't include it in my budget for this year. It goes into a different category. So to answer your question, though, every year we generate surplus from any number of sources. And that money gets rolled in on a 2-year cycle. So surplus from this year, we don't use for next year's budget, we use for the following year. It's not a rolling cycle. And we want to balance using it because I don't want to be taxing residents more than we need to. So if we have a $5 million surplus to given year, that means we collected $5 million more than we needed to. So we want to keep that surplus number low, or at least as low as we can that's being financially responsible. Because like everybody else, you need a cushion. Because if your expense comes in and you're not prepared for, something happens in the following year, you need to have that surplus to be able to help smooth out any changes in expenses or any changes in income.
Got it. Okay. Completely understood. Thank you. So, all right. Brass tacks. How much did Bridgwater Township raise property taxes this year?
Okay. $6. What I had mentioned in the past is that an average household overall will see their bill go up this year $34. That is what accounts we talked before about assessed value. So the $28 that a resident might see their taxes go up, a tax bill go up, that's because their assessed value going up. That's if we had done nothing, except the values went up, so we collected more money as a whole in our township off of our property taxes. We then needed to make up an additional $6 in order to make sure that we could provide the services for our residents that we believe we should be providing. And so that's how the numbers come across.
We $6, for the average taxpayer. What does that mean in terms of the tax rate?
Yeah, so tax rate, this means it's going to go up by 0.001. That is what tax rate goes up this year. And obviously for residents, I know everyone understands that if your property is worth $400,000 or $800,000 or $1.2 million, obviously the numbers that we're using, the $6 might fluctuate, but that rate applies to everybody. So you can look at your property value, you can figure out what the rate is, and that's what you ultimately pay in property taxes. And to be clear that rate, that's our portion. So, that's what the rate goes up this year to account for our budget.
Okay, understood. How does that rate compare to others in the area?
It's small. It's very small. So when you look at what other municipalities are doing in our area, Bridgwater is extremely on the low end of comparable towns. So, we have a chart which is here which shows where Bridgwater's tax rate fits in with the change of municipalities throughout Somerset County and in the surrounding area. And that's because we have a great team of people here in Bridgwater. We have great ratables. We have great businesses that help out with their contributions in property taxes. We have sources of revenue that we get in to help offset our costs. And we've been extremely prudent in how we set up our priorities.
So, okay, your average resident has a $6 increase to their property taxes. Are there any other ways that the municipality raises money to pay for the budget?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we look at that, our budget as a whole, only a portion of that gets paid from our taxpayers, from our property taxpayers. And that's the other element of our budget that changes every year, depending on where we are getting revenue from as a municipality. So as an example, in Bridgwater, we get money from the Bridgwater Commons Mall. That's an incredibly important part of our budgeting process is we get money off of property taxes and rent from them. As a community, we share. When the mall does well, we as a community do well. We also get a fair amount of money off of hotel occupancy taxes. So the more folks who are using our hotels that are coming in means more revenue for the township. We get revenue from construction code fees, from permitting fees. All those things are components of our budget process. In the past year, we've also seen sometimes it's a liquor license sale. There could be some unique issues year to year. Grants from the state. This year in our budget, there's a $750,000 grant to help pay for some of our roads. That's income this year that helps offset our cost of a road program. So those are all things which go into the budget. However, when those things change every year, that's where we also have to look at either cutting costs somewhere else or alternative sources of revenue. So if our hotel occupancy taxes are down, well then we're now losing that revenue that has to either be made up in revenue from some other place, hopefully in our taxpayers, but sometimes you have to look at that, or we have to cut the expenses to match the decreased revenue.
You've mentioned that Bridgwater collects taxes for all these other various entities. What's the breakdown there? What percentage of your property tax bill actually goes to Bridgwater?
Right. So to go for our budget, it's 11%. So if you get your bill, and it's usually there's information on there, but the biggest portion of your bill is the school taxes. That's about 67% of what you pay goes to the school district. And of course, when they raise taxes or when they impose additional costs because of all-day kindergarten or construction or administrator salaries, whatever that might be, those taxes and costs get collected from the township and we pass those on directly to the school district. So that's 67% right there. Then you have the county. So Somerset County is the next biggest portion. It's about 20%. And then there's also a few other smaller, so your fire districts are in there. There's a separate library tax. There's a separate county open space tax. There's a few other smaller entities. And then we have Bridgewater's 11%.
Got it. Has Bridgewater had a 5%, 6%, 13%, and 8% tax increase in the years 22, 23, 24, 25? Is there any truth to that?
No. And first of all, if that had been true, I'm pretty sure we would have heard about it in all the prior years of when those alleged tax increases occurred. Anybody who's making those statements doesn't understand the difference between a tax rate and the tax increase on households, what you pay versus a tax rate versus our budget or what we collect in the budget. So saying that there's a 5 or a 6 or a 13% tax increase by looking at changes in tax rates is you're talking apples to oranges, and it's misleading to the public. And that's one of the biggest concerns we have is that, look, we can have a debate about should we be putting more resources towards this program or that program. Those are debates that municipalities and residents and elected officials have all the time. But we need to make sure that our residents are working under the same understanding and set of facts that are there, and those facts aren't accurate.
Got it. Let's talk about Camp Cromwell.
Sure.
Camp Cromwell has had a lot of buzz,
Yes.
and I think everyone in the community is very excited to sort of see the revitalization of that area and what it'll bring to the community. Has the Camp Cromwell project been held up for budgetary reasons?
No. So as residents may know, we received a significant grant from the federal government to put towards Camp Cromwell. Which won't cover all the costs, but will cover a lot. But as one might imagine, with the federal government, nothing is simple. So it's not like they arrive and just hand you a check and say, go town, open up our park.
Right.
Instead, right now, we are going through the HUD process. That's the Housing and Urban Development Department at federal government to get approvals to actually start getting that money.
Okay.
So once we get through the HUD process, then we'll start being able to have access to that money, but it is a reimbursable grant, which means at some point in time, we will need to front that money and get it paid back, whether that's directly in our budget or whether that's going to be having to bond to get that money to get paid back. So that is something that we'll see in future years.
Got it. What's the story behind the environmental? So as we sort of wrap up our time here, if you could sort of if you had one big message about Bridgwater's budgeting process in this year, in all years, what's that message?
My message, and one I believe that's shared by the council subcommittee that works with the administration on our budget, is that we are committed to making sure that we give residents the best budget we can for our residents, regardless of spin, regardless of fancy headlines, or something that's just going to set us up for future problems. What you can't do is think, as we talked about before, with the increasing inflation costs and fixed costs, it is completely unreasonable to think that we are going to be able to keep budget costs the same 10 years from now that we're in now. You can't be in elected office for 10 years and expect that somehow you're going to provide the same services that you did 10 years ago for the same costs and not have it impact the residents. It's impossible. It's a mathematical impossibility to do that. So when we go through this process, it is extremely deliberative, it's extremely collaborative, and we make sure that we look at everything. And our staff here would tell you that we looked at everything. We went into looking at different areas where can we cut here, and not just can we cut in the short term, but what is the impact also in the long term. Yeah. We don't want budget gimmicks to overshadow sound financial management of our municipality, because all that's going to do is set us up for a problem in the future. And here you always have talk about, well, it's an election year, so it's going to be artificially low or gimmicks or anything like that. And we've never done that in 6 years that I have been mayor. We will never continue to do that, because all that does is create problems in the future. So we're here today to provide the best budget for our residents that we can. And I believe that this budget does exactly that. And I stand 100% behind it. I think residents will be extremely pleased with the services we will continue to provide, as well as the things that we want to do in the future.
Awesome. Mayor, thank you so much for taking time to
talk
through all of this with us. This is it's important information, and we really appreciate you taking the time.
No problem. Thank you.
Everyone, have a great day, and tune in next time for more Talk in the Town.